Now winter is one of my favourite times for carp fishing. Fish are at their best weights, they're in tip-top condition. Admittedly it's a little bit harder during the winter because the fish are less active, but if you can locate them, then you've got a good chance of catching a few fish. The snow on the ground and the lakes are frozen, and this is what I'd call proper winter conditions. This morning I want to give you a quick run through to some of the methods, the tried and tested methods that me and my mates use throughout the colder months to nick us the odd bite. $16mm Richworth Tutti Frutti bottom bait. Like I said before, ain't the carp alive, don't eat a toot. And these are the business. Really attractive. I think it's just the flavour. The flavour is an absolute killer, and carp will always investigate it. Fish that on its own, or I use it with a 2-bait stringer or a 3-bait stringer, or even like a 1-bait stringer, which again are like presentations I got a lot of confidence in, because I'm always fishing for that one bite. If I get one, then I'll get the bait back out there and I'll hopefully catch another. Bright ones during the winter. Now you can fish that on a pop-up rig of your choice. You can fish it as a balance rig, but little bright ones, bright yellow ones, bright white is a good one. Orange I've always done well on, so something to get their attention. Another favourite of mine is Nutribait's pineapple and butyric pop-ups. Real nice yellow colour, really good buoyant properties, they stay buoyant, and they're extremely good winter bait. I think the little yellow pop-up in the winter is one never to neglect.
Now I use like high-powered fluoro singles and stuff, like, you know, just like as an attractor single up bait.
Got some pineapple air balls, buoyant enough. I mean, there's a couple of different sizes there. You see, I've got some 10mm ones that can be for a snowman rig, a little sighter on top of ones, a bit visual. Or the 15mm ones, which will go on my hinge rigs or chod rigs, depends what I'm using really.
Nice little cream bottom bait, chocolate malt bottom bait, and a nice little white enticer on top.
Little 11mm pop-ups like the old proper style. They're not as buoyant as chod rig baits, but they don't have to be. You know, and with a little shot you can get these, you can critically balance it, and everything about it once that water goes cold is right.
Just a single pop-up, fluoro, tied KD with a shot behind it.
Like the KD rig, you put like a little pop-up on there, a little split shot underneath it, and that balances the whole thing out. Everything with the KD rig is tuned towards separation.
A little white chocolate malt barrel, 10mm, just with some white pellet on.
One thing that I think's been a massive edge in the last few winters I've done, especially on day ticket lakes, is glugging your PVA sticks and bags. The maple 8 is just awesome in the winter. If you can glug it in that, whack it out there, it can outfish my other rods easily.
One particular night I was fishing up there in the bailiffs. My mate Dave Benton was down there in the car park swim. The lake was freezing, but he saw about 6 shows, probably 30 yards out, just off to the right there. Lake froze over for a few days, turned up, went in there, stuck a bait out there, single tutti frutti with a yellow topper on top, and had a 24-pound mirror. Just goes to show that you can catch carp in the winter.
What I tend to do is tie my bags onto leads, whack the lead out, fill the drop, let the bag dissolve, bring the lead back, do another bag.
Winter feeding can be quite localised, but the fish can feed as voraciously as they do in the summer. Now a few winters ago I was fishing over at Frimley Pit 2. Basically there was this bush, one particular bush that I was fishing across to. I put in a few handfuls of sweet corn the day before, gone up there and basically cast in hinge stiff links over just onto the corner of the bush. I didn't have to be particularly close to the bush, and I had 2 rods out there, and it was one rod that just kept going and kept going. I ended up with 7 fish that day in the depth of winter, and it was all on one particular rod. If it was anywhere off that spot, I wouldn't get a bite.
When it goes towards winter time, and that, I mean, you know, I use a lot of maggot and stuff like that, which is really, I mean, I use really small hooks, like size 10s and whatever, which is probably one of my favourite baits throughout the winter. You know, I use it and whatever.
Now another example that I'll give of that is when my mate Dave Benton was fishing in the car park swim, and he had an amazing run of fish out of that car park swim going to one spot. Now, like I said before, Dave's very particular about marking up his line and all that kind of thing. He's got his marks on the far bank, tree markers, and he was going out to this one spot, I call it the Dave Benton spot, and he would tow his boat out there and he would get a take. He ended up with some monumental amount of fish, most of which, I think it was something like 90% of them fish, came to one rod on one spot. Particular favourites of ours would be the maggot, done quite well on that. Really good for in the real cold winter months. With that one I tend to go shorter on the hook links. I like 12-pound ESP strip tees. Size 9 barber look, it's just a tiny little bit bigger than the size 10 big tees. I've done well on the size 10 big tees out of here as well with 2 or 3 maggots. But with a size 9 it's a little bit bigger. It's a straight point hook with an inturned eye. You just push the eye into the maggot grub at the appropriate point, so it creates like a flip over effect. I truly believe that fish do spend a lot of their time mid-water during the winter, so really you want to entice them down with something that says I am food. I like putting the crumb in there with the maggots to give it a bit of added attraction. One of my particular favourites is using ground up breadcrumb. You got like the cheap white rolls, put them in the old quarter crusher, it goes to a fine crumb. The good thing about mixing up crumb with your maggots in the bag is basically you've got somewhere to hook your hook into, and then you can use all kind of things in there. Ground up boilies, I like grinding up tutti fruities, and another little trick that I used was getting like breadcrumb again, or different types of breadcrumb, and mixing it up with like something like soluble fish protein like L030, so that every little bit of bread in there is coated with attractive fish protein amino acids. Something like the cell ground up with bread would be quite good. Another good winter method is the Medusa rig. Now you can use your normal KD rig. You just have like a little half a maggot grub on the hair, so your hook don't get tangled in the squirming ball of maggots. Now I've used that with up to 35-40 maggots on a real ball of it. So imagine again, it's very, very visual. It's on the bottom, it's probably, you know, just under the size of a golf ball almost, of squirming live maggots. And I think that's quite irresistible to fish. Now friends of mine like Martin, he uses less maggots, 7 maggots on the hook. I said, why 7? He said, well, it's a lucky number, isn't it? And he done quite well on that. And that was fishing over spotted maggots, just a little bit. So yeah, you always nick a bite on the old maggots in winter, so they're pretty good.
I've gone for a mixture of maggots, so you've got a different colour out there, rather than just them coming over the same white or red and being a bit cagey around it.
Like I always try and scale down my presentation a little bit. So say for example in the summer I would have used like 15-pound line on one particular water that I was fishing. Over here on Sandhurst during the winter I find I can scale down to like 12-pound. I mean, like hook wise, one of my favourites, size 10 wide gate, called a wide gate, which is a really good hook. Alternatively, things like size 10 or 12 Gardner muggers, or the old atomic claws. Again, that one's an inturned point with an inturned eye. That's a good sharp small hook. So always fine your presentation down if you can. Carp are creatures of habit. Now more often than not, the same winter areas produce year in, year out. Now there's a few areas here over on Sandhurst, deep silty depressions, and this is where invariably the fish end up every winter. If they're not in one depression, they'll be in another.